Michael froze, his expensive fork clattering against the fine china plate. Through the soft amber lighting of the upscale restaurant, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. There, in a black uniform and sensible shoes, was Rachel, his ex-wife of 6 months, with a visible baby bump, carrying a tray of appetizers. "Is everything all right, darling?" Amanda, his new girlfriend, reached across the table to touch his hand. Her diamond bracelet caught the light, a gift he'd given her just last week. But Michael couldn't take his eyes off Rachel, who hadn't noticed him yet. His mind raced back to their last conversation, when Rachel had signed the divorce papers without a fight. She'd been wearing one of her designer suits then, her Harvard MBA hanging proudly in their home office. Now, she was serving tables, pregnant, and looking exhausted but somehow still graceful. "Michael." Amanda's voice grew concerned, but it sounded distant. Just 8 months ago, Rachel had been the CFO of their tech company, brilliant with numbers and strategy. She'd been instrumental in building his $400 million empire from the ground up. Their divorce had been unexpected, shocking their entire social circle. Rachel had simply said they'd grown apart, packed her bags, and disappeared. The maitre d' was leading Rachel toward their section. Michael's heart pounded as she approached, her steps faltering slightly as recognition dawned in her eyes. For a split second, her professional mask slipped, revealing a flash of something: pain? Fear? Before she recovered her composure. "Good evening, I'll be your server tonight," Rachel said steadily, though her hand trembled slightly as she pulled out her notepad. She wouldn't meet Michael's eyes. Amanda looked between them, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the table. "Do you two know each other?" she asked, but her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Before either could respond, Rachel swayed slightly, her hand moving to her belly. Michael instinctively stood up to steady her, but she stepped back. "I'm fine," she said quietly, then turned to leave. "I'll send another server to take care of you." "Wait," Michael called out, louder than he intended. Several heads turned their way. "Rachel, you're pregnant." "Oh, when?" She finally looked at him then, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It's really none of your business anymore, is it?" she replied softly. But as she turned away, Michael caught a glimpse of her reflection in the restaurant's mirror wall. The look on her face told him there was so much more to the story. Amanda cleared her throat. "Well, this is awkward," she said, reaching for her wine glass. But Michael noticed something odd. She didn't seem surprised at all. In fact, there was almost a satisfied smirk playing at the corners of her red lips. That's when Michael remembered something crucial. Something that made his blood run cold. The night Rachel asked for a divorce, she'd received a phone call. He'd only heard her say one thing before she hung up: "Amanda, please don't." Looking at his new girlfriend now, Michael realized with growing horror that he might have been played for a fool. And his ex-wife's current situation suddenly seemed far more sinister than a simple story of moving on after divorce. Michael excused himself from the table, ignoring Amanda's protests, and followed Rachel toward the kitchen. He caught up with her in a quiet hallway near the staff entrance. "You need to explain this," he said, gesturing to her pregnant belly. "The timing. It means nothing," Rachel cut him off sharply, but her voice cracked. "Go back to your date, Michael. I'm sure Amanda is waiting." The way she said Amanda's name made Michael's suspicions grow stronger. "How do you know Amanda? What was that phone call about, the night you asked for divorce?" Rachel's face paled. She glanced nervously at a security camera in the corner before speaking in a whisper. "You weren't supposed to find out like this. You weren't supposed to find out at all." "Find out what?" Michael pressed, stepping closer. "Your perfect new girlfriend? She's been working with Thomas and Richard all along." Rachel's words came out in a rush, as if she'd been holding them back for months. "Your trusted business partners. Remember them? The ones who helped you save the company while I supposedly mismanaged the finances." Michael felt like he'd been punched in the gut. Thomas and Richard were his closest advisors, friends he'd trusted for years. They'd shown him proof that Rachel had been making risky investments, nearly tanking their company. That evidence had shattered their marriage. They fabricated everything, Rachel continued, her voice trembling. The financial records, the suspicious transfers, all of it. They needed me out because I discovered their scheme. They've been siphoning millions from the company for years. But why didn't you tell me? Michael demanded, his world tilting on its axis. Rachel laughed bitterly, one hand protectively over her belly. They gave me a choice. Leave quietly, or they'd release doctored evidence showing you had been involved in insider trading. They had everything prepared. Fake emails, forged signatures, backdated documents. You would have gone to prison. Michael leaned against the wall, his legs weak. And Amanda. She's Thomas's sister. They brought her in months before I found out about their scheme. She was their insurance policy, planted to get close to you after they forced me out. A busboy walked past, and Rachel quickly wiped her eyes, straightening her uniform. I have tables to serve, she said quietly. Wait, Michael caught her arm gently. The baby. Rachel's eyes filled with fresh tears. Remember that weekend in Aspen? Our last trip together, before everything fell apart? Well, we brought back more than just memories. She pulled away from his grasp. I found out the day after I signed the divorce papers. By then, it was too late. You were already being photographed with Amanda at charity galas. She turned to leave but paused. They're planning something big, Michael. The company's annual shareholder meeting is next week. Whatever they're going to do, it's happening then. Just be careful. As Rachel disappeared through the kitchen doors, Michael stood frozen in the hallway. His phone buzzed, a text from Amanda. Everything okay, darling? The appetizers are getting cold. He stared at the message, remembering all the times Amanda had asked about company logistics, all the late-night calls she'd taken in other rooms, all the coincidental meetings with Thomas and Richard. How had he been so blind? Michael walked back to the table, his mind racing. Amanda was smiling sweetly, but now he saw something calculating behind her perfect makeup and designer dress. Your ex-wife seems to be going through a rough patch, she said, sipping her wine. Who would have thought someone with her background would end up serving tables? Life can be so unpredictable. Drop the act, Amanda, Michael said quietly, his voice cold. Or should I ask your brother Thomas how he's doing? The wine glass froze halfway to her lips. For a split second, her mask slipped, revealing a flash of panic before she recovered. I don't know what you're talking about, she replied smoothly. The stress must be getting to you, darling. The shareholder meeting next week, Michael pressed on, watching her reaction carefully. What's really going to happen? Amanda's phone buzzed. Michael caught a glimpse of the screen. Thomas's name. She quickly declined the call. Nothing's going to happen, sweetheart. Just the usual quarterly updates. Now, shall we order? But Michael was already pulling out his laptop, logging into the company's secure server. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he accessed files he hadn't looked at in months, documents Rachel had tried to show him before their divorce. He'd been too angry, too hurt by her supposed betrayal to listen. What are you doing? Amanda's voice had lost its sweetness. Finding the truth, Michael muttered, opening file after file. There it was, a trail of transactions hidden behind shell companies, all leading back to offshore accounts. Millions of dollars, systematically drained from the company over years. Rachel had found this, tried to investigate, and that's when they turned him against her. His phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number, back entrance. 10 minutes. Bring your laptop. Amanda was typing furiously on her phone. Thomas, he knows. He heard her whisper urgently. The whole thing's falling apart. Michael stood up abruptly. I have to use the restroom, he said mechanically, grabbing his laptop. Amanda started to protest, but he was already walking away. He found Rachel waiting by her car, her server's apron discarded. I kept copies, she said without preamble, pulling out a USB drive. Of everything. Every transaction, every fake document they created, every threat they made. I knew someday you'd need to know the truth. Why now? Michael asked, taking the drive. Why didn't you find a way to tell me sooner? Rachel's hand went to her belly again. Because next week, at the shareholder meeting, they're planning to announce a merger. The company would be absorbed by their shell corporation. Everyone would lose their jobs. Hundreds of people. I couldn't let that happen, not when I finally had proof. Suddenly, car headlights flooded the parking lot. A black SUV screeched to a halt nearby. Thomas and Richard stepped out, Amanda hurrying behind them. "Well, well," Thomas called out, his voice echoing in the dark lot. "Family reunion." Richard pulled something from his jacket, a gun. "The USB drive, now," he demanded. "And your laptop, Michael. Nobody needs to get hurt here." Rachel stepped forward, placing herself between Michael and the gun. "Actually," she said, her voice stronger than he'd heard it in months, "I think the FBI agents in that van across the street might disagree." Flashing lights suddenly illuminated the parking lot as FBI vehicles swarmed in from all directions. Richard's gun clattered to the ground as agents surrounded them, shouting commands. Thomas tried to run but was quickly tackled. Amanda stood frozen, her designer purse slipping from her shoulder. Federal agents. Everyone on the ground. An agent approached with his weapon drawn. "Rachel Chen, step back please. You've done your part." Michael turned to Rachel in shock. "Your part?" She nodded, watching as agents handcuffed Thomas, Richard, and Amanda. "For the past 6 months, I've been working with the FBI's white-collar crime division. That's the real reason I took the waitressing job, to maintain surveillance on their meetings. This restaurant is their favorite spot for discussing business." An FBI agent approached them, badge in hand. "Mrs. Chen has been instrumental in this investigation. She came to us right after discovering the fraud, but we needed time to build a solid case. The pregnancy complicated things, but she insisted on seeing it through." Michael felt dizzy with revelation. "All this time, you were undercover? Every night, serving tables, pregnant." "It wasn't ideal," Rachel admitted, watching as the agents led the conspirators to separate vehicles. "But I couldn't let them destroy everything we built. The company employs over 1,000 people. Their families depend on those jobs." Amanda was being led past them. She stopped, spitting out words like venom. "You think you've won? Our lawyers will tear this case apart. It'll be your word against ours, and who's going to believe a waitress?" Rachel smiled, reaching into her server's apron. "Actually, it'll be your own words that convict you." She pulled out what looked like an ordinary pen. "Every conversation you had in my section over the past 6 months? Recorded, including tonight's admission about the merger." Thomas's face went pale. "You bit." An agent pushed him into a vehicle before he could finish. The lead FBI agent turned to Michael. "Mr. Walker, we'll need you to come down to the field office. There's a lot to discuss about the future of your company, and we'll need your testimony." Michael barely heard him. He was staring at Rachel, seeing her in a completely new light. She'd sacrificed everything, their marriage, her reputation, her comfort, to save the company and protect him, all while carrying their child. "The morning sickness was real, you know," Rachel said softly, noticing his gaze. "Morning, noon, and night. Try keeping your cover while running to the bathroom between taking orders." "Why didn't you tell me about the baby?" Michael asked, his voice breaking. Rachel's hand moved to her belly instinctively. "At first, I couldn't. Any contact with you might have compromised the investigation. Then I saw the photos of you and Amanda. You seemed happy. I didn't want to complicate your life." "Complicate my..." Michael started to protest, but was interrupted by the FBI agent. "Mrs. Chen, we should get your official statement tonight. Mr. Walker, if you'll follow Agent Martinez." As they were led to separate cars, Michael caught Rachel's eye. There was so much left to say, so much to understand. She gave him a small smile, then mouthed words that made his heart stop. "It's a girl." The agent opened the car door, but Michael barely noticed. His mind was reeling with everything he'd learned in the past hour. His ex-wife wasn't a traitor. She was a hero. He wasn't just a divorced CEO. He was going to be a father. And the company he thought he'd saved from her? She'd actually saved it from them. 3 months later, Michael stood at a podium facing hundreds of employees. The company's main auditorium was packed for his first public address since the scandal broke. Rachel sat in the front row, her pregnancy now in its final weeks. "As your CEO, I owe you all an explanation," he began, his voice carrying across the silent room. "Our company nearly fell victim to an elaborate fraud scheme. Were it not for the incredible courage and sacrifice of one person, we would have lost everything." His eyes met Rachel's. She gave him a subtle nod. "The past 3 months have been transformative." The FBI investigation revealed that Thomas and Richard had embezzled over $50 million through their network of shell companies. Amanda's role as their inside informant helped them gather sensitive information about our operations. All 3 are now facing federal charges. He paused, gripping the podium. "But that's not why I called this meeting. Today, I'm announcing a major restructuring of our executive team. First, we're implementing new oversight measures to ensure nothing like this ever happens again. And second," he smiled, looking directly at Rachel, "I'm proud to announce our new Chief Operations Officer, pending one small delay for maternity leave." The audience erupted in applause as Rachel's eyes widened in surprise. This wasn't part of their discussions about her return to the company. "Rachel Chen didn't just save our company," Michael continued once the applause died down. "She sacrificed everything to protect us all. While we believed the lies told about her, she worked as a waitress for 6 months, gathering evidence, all while carrying our child. She chose to protect over 1,000 jobs rather than her own reputation." Rachel was crying now, hormones and emotions overwhelming her usual composure. The employee beside her squeezed her hand supportively. "The divorce papers were nullified last week," Michael announced, his voice softening. "The court agreed they were signed under duress and false pretenses. And yesterday..." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Rachel, would you join me up here?" The audience gasped as Rachel, helped by 2 colleagues, made her way to the podium. Michael turned to face her, microphone forgotten. "6 months ago, I let others convince me to doubt the most honest person I've ever known. I lost my wife, my partner, and nearly lost my daughter before even knowing about her." He opened the box, revealing a platinum ring. "I don't want a new beginning. I want to continue our story, wiser from our past, stronger from our trials. Will you marry me? Again?" Rachel took the microphone, her eyes sparkling. "On one condition," she said, her voice echoing through the auditorium. "I want it in writing that our daughter's college fund will never be managed by any uncles named Thomas." The audience laughed, then broke into cheers as Michael slipped the ring onto her finger. Just then, Rachel gasped, grabbing Michael's arm. "What's wrong?" he asked, panic crossing his face. Rachel smiled through tears. "Your daughter has impeccable timing. My water just broke." As security cleared a path and someone called an ambulance, Michael held Rachel close. From convicted conspirators to a renewed marriage and a baby on the way. All because he happened to take his fake girlfriend to his ex-wife's restaurant. Life had a strange way of bringing truth to light. The last thing employees heard as the couple was rushed out was Rachel's voice. "At least this beats going into labor while carrying a tray of appetizers." Like the story, subscribe, like, and comment. See you in the next video.